Ask the Podcast Coach for December 21st, 2024.
Let's get ready to podcast.
There it is. It's that music that means it's Saturday morning. It's time for Ask the Podcast Coach, where you get your podcast questions answered live. I'm Dave Jackson from the School of Podcasting.com, and joining me right over there is the one and only Jim Cullison from theaverageguy.tv. Jim, how's it going, buddy?
Greetings, Dave. Happy Saturday morning to you. Happy pre-Christmas as we get ready. It's the 21st as we're recording, so we're close. Yeah. Weird to have Christmas in the middle of the week. We should do something about that. Like, it should be like Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
It's the same day, or the same day of the week. It just messes stuff up. But
I always think it's funny.
Who am I to be the Grinch?
I always think it's funny on Sundays. Like, when it's on a Sunday, it's like, hey, wait, I don't want to go to church to celebrate, the birthday of the person that the church is based on. Like, it's getting in my way. So it's always fun.
Well, not to be the humbug, but Merry Christmas, everybody, as we get ready for it here.
Yeah. And you know what would make a great gift under the tree that everybody loves except me that doesn't drink coffee?
Okay.
That would be that hot cup of Java. And that is brought to you by our good friend Mark over at podcastbranding.co. Because you got to remember, they're going to see you before they hear you. And I have something better that I can talk about here. I had somebody this week that sent me some artwork. It's a client of mine. And it had the name of the show really small. It had a microphone. It had their tagline. It had so much stuff on the artwork, and I felt bad because I just knee-jerked a Zoom video, and I said, hey, this is awful. Like, what are you doing here? And there's a website that I don't have off the top of my head that you can go to and actually preview it in Apple, and I was like, you need Mark. You need Mark. He knows what podcast artwork is going to be. He knows what a great website looks like, and I was just like, wow, this is somebody who, and I believe his, quote, designer designed the artwork, and it was pretty, and it had little squigglies and stuff like that. You need somebody who understands podcasting, and that's where Mark comes in. He's been in podcasting forever. He's an award-winning graphic artist. Check him out at podcastbranding.co.
And of course, big thanks to our good friend Dan Lefebvre over there, based on a true story podcast.com. Been waiting my whole life for this week. Indiana Jones collection. All 5 of them are out there. He spent some time with Neil Lard, and they talk about Indiana Jones. So if you're a Indiana Jones fan, this is the week. Head out there. Based on a true story podcast.com. I'm sure they're great. Dan, thanks for your sponsorship.
And I would like to say I did this on purpose so everybody would notice. Sure, that's what I did. You have a typo in the title. You have FRE, meaning free. You're supposed to say free podcast consulting. Yeah, it's FRE. Today we are doing a free podcast consulting. So
hey, it's a FRE.
That's called Dave scrambling at the last minute to
it's okay. It's okay.
But
I'm just glad. Listen, I'm glad you survived last week, Dave, because we found out a little bit later in the week that you had COVID.
Yeah,
and you made it. Like you podcasted last Saturday. I was a little questionable with you during the whole show. I was like, is he gonna pass out during the show? You did 90 minutes with COVID last week. So I'm glad you're better.
Yeah, I had a feeling. And what was funny is because I've been watching all these Christmas movies, right? So it's like, hey, Christmas is coming. So for me, that was last Saturday. And then it's like, wait, what? You're not feeling well? And then there's always that, we've got to try it. So I got to try it was I took a nap from 1 to 2. And I woke up at 2 and I was like, hey, I still feel like crap. And that's when I called my brother. I said, I don't want to get you guys sick because they're leaving for Florida. And so what I did is I went and got a COVID test. And what was funny is sometimes you're like, well, if you hold it this way, it kind of looks like I'm. No, it was like, you have COVID. It was like, no question about it. And so it was funny. I drove over to his house, put all the gifts on his front door. He had left some cookies and stuff on his front porch. We waved at each other in the window, and that was Christmas. So that was, So luckily, Friday I tested negative. I still kind of have a little stuff going on with my nose, but yeah. So the show must go on. So
I'm impressed to make it through 90 minutes of a podcast. You are a Hall of Fame podcaster. You could podcast for 90 minutes with COVID.
Here's the thing. I mean, this is for me. It gets me energized. This is what I love to talk about. But the thing that was definitely real is there's always a little bit of an adrenaline crash after this show. But last week it was like just, it's like, so yeah.
How'd you get school podcasting done? Like, I mean, that couldn't have been easy.
It wasn't, because Sunday I was still not great. I was,
Right.
And so what I would do is I had already kind of organized what it was going to be. And I would come in, record about 20 minutes, and I would start to get sweaty. And I'm like, okay, let's go lay down. I'd take an involuntary nap. I'd wake up. I'd come back in. All right, let's record this little segment. All right, time to go lay down. So it took me, the better part of 14 hours to do. And then the one thing I did do, and this is where I really like Captivate's AI tool. I was like, all right, I got it done. It's out. Upload it to Captivate. Run your AI stuff. Grab the title I liked. Grab the summary I like. Click, click, click. Done. And that was it. I was like, I'm not, usually I write a whole show notes thing and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, let's make sure the links are in there and see you bye. And that was it. So, yeah, it's one of those times where I kind of go, I should have some universal, one in the can. Because you never know when you're going to get COVID. It was like, if I'd had some...
Old pretty fast, though, right? I mean, in theory, you're a topical in the moment show. It'd be not impossible, but it'd be pretty hard. Do you think? So, say you do a show like that, and you publish some half-baked. I won't say half-assed, but half-baked. I just did. So, some half-baked show notes. Do you think when you feel better, should you go back and maybe fill those in better? I mean, just because you release a show and the show notes go out doesn't mean it's inspired or it's it's holy. You can change these things, right? And so, what do you think? What do you think about that? Going back maybe within a week or two and updating it if you just kind of gave them the minimum.
Here's the beauty of it. I did an episode about a month ago about how there really isn't a one size fits all. Like, I like Captivate a lot, but that's because I use a lot of dynamic stuff. I use a lot of their tools. But if your goal is to, I'm going to do a show twice a month, probably 15, 20 minutes, don't really care about, I just want to get the word out. You know what? Libsyn might be your best choice. $7 a month, good to go. And so I did this episode that talked about all the features. Well, since then, like Blueberry just announced, they have broken out their AI tool, and you can use it without being a Blueberry customer. And I'm like, oh, that's really cool. I want to check that out. Well, how do I now go back and update that? So what I'm going to do, I haven't done it yet, is I'm going to make a little pre-roll that says, hey, this is Future Dave. Just so you know, the original was recorded in November. At the very end of the show, I'm going to tell you anything that's been added since this episode came out, and that'll be a post roll. And I was like, that's a really cool use of dynamic stuff. So in that case, yeah, I'll go back and update it. Most of the time, and what's always weird,
the show. I'm not talking about updating the audio. I'm talking about the show notes.
Oh, yes, yeah.
But now that you're talking about audio, that makes sense. But I was talking about the show notes.
Yeah, I have done that. I'm trying to think. It's so funny because I was in such a blur last week. I don't remember what last week's episode was about. But I might go back and touch that up a bit because the whole thing is to be found.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, it begs the question: should you? I mean, I think we've talked about this a bunch before, but should you go back to some really good episodes from 2 or 3 years ago and completely update their show notes? If you've learned some things about how to make show notes work, should you go back in and update those, or use AI to update them?
See, that's a good question right there, because I was a little foggy this week when I did the PodPage newsletter on Monday. I would write my blurb, I'd put it into ChatGPT, and I go, make this better. That was my prompt, make this better. And it did in every case. And I was like, okay. So I remember once I did an episode, and it was something like, Everything Old is New Again, I think was the title, because it was about Christmas and my nieces had gotten Polaroid cameras and jumped around like they won Taylor Swift tickets. And I'm looking at my brother going, isn't that a Polaroid camera? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, don't they have phones? Yes, they have phones. I was really confused. And so I went back later because Everything Old is New Again made sense, but it really wasn't a great title. Like, it didn't make people want to click on it, maybe. And so I went back there and kind of rephrased it because that was part of the story, but there was more to that episode that was much more podcasting centric. And I was like, no, it's one of those where it's an inside joke. And so, of course, everybody gets this. And you're like, no, nobody has no idea what I'm talking about. So I've done that. I've gone back to I've removed, I think, 2 or 3 episodes because they just were completely out of date. I remember there was one I interviewed 3 people from 3 different companies. This was like back in 2007 or 8. And every single one of them was gone. I was like, well, this is pointless. All the links are dead. I was like, why would I want somebody to listen to this and then not be able to go, take it? So have you ever gone back and updated anything?
I know. No, I should. I mean, it's a thought. As we were talking about this, I was thinking, would I go back? We just celebrated 14 years, right? So would I go back and take that audio and run it through AI and give it a once over, and then change the show notes? Well, the topics are so 14 years ago and it's technology. So the odds of somebody actually listening it to again and find something helpful in it, you kind of go, is it worth the work to go in and do that? I would probably say no. I don't know if I'd find, I don't know if I'd find value or if anybody would find value in that. But sure, from a nostalgia standpoint, it sure seems interesting to take the audio from 14 years ago, drop it in and see what it gives me. And then try some new show notes. We did show notes completely different then. And and many of those links, I have a broken link checker on my website, right? And it goes back through and checks for things that aren't working anymore. Well, the broken links on that page alone, I've probably fixed many of them, but a lot of them are pointing to sites at archive.org now, because like in the tech topic, I don't want to just eliminate the link. I want to send them to the page in the past if I can, because if they're looking for like HP touchpad, which was super popular for about 3 weeks in 2011, I think, right? There was a lot around it. All that stuff is gone. So you have to go to archive.org to get it. It is a nice service for me, I think. I'm congratulating myself on that one, to have a link that takes them to archive.org of the original post when it was there. And so that's kind of something I do for folks if they're looking for nostalgic links or links that are no longer gone. I'm going to go ahead and point them to the archive.org site. So I don't know, Dave, I asked you because I myself was wondering, am I missing an opportunity by not going back to episode 1? Now, to do 600 of them, we have 633 this week. To do 600 of them, if I did one a day, it'd take me 2 years to get through the whole catalog, right? So,
well, it's funny you said we don't do show notes like we normally do, and I mean I write.
Anyways.
Yeah, this is hilarious because normally I'm writing a full page of show notes, and if we go to here, this is my first episode. Your first episode typically stinks. Has a picture of a skunk on it, and it is maybe 4 paragraphs. And if we count a sentence as a paragraph, the first time you shoot a basket, you probably miss. The 10th time you shoot a basket, you'll probably be better. Podcasting is not different. Just because you know that you'll be back from your 10th, you'll see this is, yes. And I still see typos 20 years later. Great. That you'll be back from your 10th podcast and say, yuck. So that should be that you'll look back from your 10th podcast and say, yuck. When you listen to your first podcast, doesn't mean you shouldn't record a podcast. You need to start, and all you can do is make the best first impression you can, blah, blah, blah. But it's not, if we do that now I'll just throw in something in the 900s here. So let's say like 910. And my guess will be we'll have like, 27 paragraphs of run on. So survey says round and round it goes. Come on, there we go. It's all about engaging your audience. So yeah. So here we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, lots of show notes. We got a video in the middle of it. We got a question. Yeah. So you can see my show notes have expanded by many, many leaps and bounds. So, but that's what we did back then, back in the day. So always fun.
Well, and you could drop that whole thing into ChatGPT and it would fix all your typos for you for sure.
Yes.
Although I saw it create one the other day. So it came out with its own typo.
That'd be funny if it looked at I want this to look like Dave wrote it. So I'm going to throw
in the style of Dave
Jackson. There's an extra H here for some reason. We don't know.
I don't know why people get so wrapped around the axle on typos. When we talk, we are not exact in the way we talk.
Right.
And I guess the people who love to point out typos to people, I mean, some are doing it to be helpful. Some are not.
Right.
It are the same people who correct you in the middle of a sentence when you're talking. But I don't, and maybe it's because I make them quite a bit too. I just read right past them. You're like, okay, I'm just trying to get to the gist here. Okay, that's it's okay. It's fine. Somebody was in a hurry when they were writing. I just don't get worried about it that much, I guess.
Ray from Around the Layout has noticed, this is why you never share your screen. Anybody else notice Dave has 20,000 unread emails? And I'm here to tell you, there's probably 3 in there that I should read. But I mean, the thing that got me today or yesterday was we got an email at Podpage, and I swear we get more requests for, can I put a link? Can I write a blog article? But my favorite was they loved everything we're doing over at Podpage, and they wanted to know if we needed help promoting our restaurant and food. That was my favorite. I was like, wow, A, it's a cold pitch. B, you don't even know what we do. I was just like, so that was kind of fun.
Yeah.
John Domingos
go ahead.
Says, I despise writing show notes. We all do. Cast Magic and now Captivate has taken that chore away from me. Captivate's chapter markers save so much time. Yeah, I love chapters. I'm not sure. I think I'm ahead of schedule. I don't know that everybody else uses them. I use them all the time. I'm listening to a show that's 3 hours long, and there are times when I'm like, all right, hold on, and I love them because I can jump around to wherever I want to go. And if for some reason you've bored me, I can skip to the next thing that maybe is less boring. So that's always kind of fun. Some other comments coming in. John asks, did you even think about taking a week off for COVID? My fans would have understood. That is true. But I just was like, well, all I'm doing is talking. And I know some people really freak out because even now my throat's a little rough, not quite normal. And I'm like, as long as I'm not, what's the guy's name? RFK, right? As long as I'm not Bobby Kennedy, because, that guy unfortunately had a disease that just ruined his voice. That's kind of hard to listen to. But also, after you listen to him for a while, it's just it kind of goes away a little bit, So, no, I didn't. And that again, is probably just my ego. I want to keep my streak alive. It's kind of stupid. Stephanie says, I need to try some of the dynamic stuff in Captivate. It feels so intimidating. It's really not hard. You just figure out, here, I want to say this. Hey, this is Stephanie. I want to let you know I just uploaded a new piece of artwork. You can check it out at nosyaf.com. Thanks for checking it out. And then somewhere in that show, I always try to do we'll be back after this. So it's easy for me to know where do I put the little dynamic thingy. But it's not hard. And if you don't like it, you take it out. Glenn the Geek is doing something in January. And he's like, hey, any chance you could mention this? And it's Glenn the Geek. I'm like, of course. And I said, dude, I work at, I use Captivate. I'll just insert it. And I go, and when the January thing is over, I'll pull it out. I'm like, be happy to help you. Ralph pointed out that one of the things I do at the School of Podcasting is people can send me stuff to listen to. So Ralph is redoing his intro. He's not rebranding. He's just redoing his intro. And I'm listening at the very end. He hired this woman from Fiverr. who is really good. She just kind of didn't notice it. But this is where, I always kind of say I listen through the ears of a podcaster. I'm a little picky. And so she said something like, with Ralph Estep Jr., blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden there's, .com. And I was like, wait, what? And I mean, it was really so, but I definitely heard .com. And I'm like, what is that some sort of cool creative effect? And it was the person he hired from Fiverr bought the music from this other place. And you have the free version, which has the, audiojungle.com and or whatever service she used. And she had accidentally used the one with the audio branding built into it.
Oh, that makes sense.
And I was like, so I caught that for him. So let's see. Steph says, Dave can come out with a bunch of scripts. Hey, this is future Dave. Yep. If you have a few good sales scripts you have said here, you can put them together and sell that. Yeah, I don't even mention that it's future Dave unless it's me fixing a typo or I've said something and, hey, I thought this was, such and such and it's not. And that's usually me finding it when I listen back to it before I make it public. And it's a matter of, do I just re-record this? And I'm like, no, I'm just going to fix it here. And, it's not that big a deal. She did have a question. When you remove episodes, do you change your episode count? No. Can you imagine what that would be if I fix something from 2007? I'd have to go back and re-record episodes. No. Now, I think episode numbers, again, are for our egos. I really do. And yeah, it makes it easy because I just went to episode 1 on my website because I know it's schoolofpodcasting.com/1. So I think it makes it easy to find stuff. And people always go, that's why I always put the episode numbers at the beginning. And I'm like, no. Like today, I mentioned episode 1 of the School of Podcasting. And I've been watching a lot of Laugh-In for some reason. So you can bet your sweet bippy. And by the way, Laugh-In does not hold up at all. It's really bad.
Comedy
but I saw
in
that,
general doesn't hold up at all.
I saw that.
Yeah.
But so you will see in the show notes today a link to episode 1 of the School of Podcasting. And yes, it's pretty bad. And, so that's my whole thing. Like if they're like, it makes it easier to find, I go, don't make people look for it. If you mention it in the episode, put it in the show notes and then you don't have to worry about where it is. So Daniel is giving us an update, I think. He says, oh, look, I'm Podgagement again today. Oh, he's talking about his name. He's worried that he's self-promoting. No, you're fine, bud.
Just log out, log back in. You'll be fine.
Yeah. Okay. Well, are we ready to do, wow, that's, they say there are no dumb questions, but
There could be.
There could be. It's the jury is out on this. So here it is. What would be the best type of mic in terms of good sound or / discreet to record myself while walking on the street? My reasoning is much better and my thinking is much clearer when I'm on the street. To which I say, well, my mind is much clearer in the shower, but I'm not trying to record there. I always love when it's like, I'm going to record in this really noisy place. How can I record it in a way that won't make it so noisy? And I'm like, well, step one, I was just talking with members of the School of Podcasting. We were talking about first things first, do what you can in the room. There's a reason there's a bookcase behind me. It helps deflect some of the sound. I've got carpet in here. It was the first thing I did when I moved in. I'm like, oh, this room needs carpet, And so when I see things like, did I talk about the hot tub guy on this show?
I don't think so.
I was like,
if you did, I want to hear it again.
I just wanted to go, please quit being like, why are you making it so hard on you? So a guy said, hey, I want to do a podcast from a hot tub. What would be the best microphone? And I was like, because he was trying again to make it sound like it wasn't in a hot tub. And we're all like, well, step one, turn off the jets. And he's like, oh yeah, I'll turn off the jets. And I'm like, okay, so now it's just you sitting in hot water. Why does it have to be you in hot water? And I'm like, and also some people are a little nervous being on video. I can't imagine going, would you like to come on my podcast? Yeah. Okay. Be sure to bring your swimming trunks. I was just like, and so I just see people that want to record, I want to record in the car. I want to record walking. And like, if his show was about walking, oh, that makes sense. But if it's like, no, I just think better when I'm walking. Well, okay, I'm glad you've acknowledged that. Let's walk with your phone open. And as you get these clear, brilliant thoughts, jot them down, organize them, and then come back to your computer and record them. I just was like, why? But the hot tub guy, we were all like, huh? The whole Reddit thread was like, why? What? So you're going to do it in a hot tub, but the hot tub's not going to be on. And just everything he said, it was almost like, are we getting punked? It's like Ashton Kutcher going to jump out in a second here and go, we brought it back, punked.
No, I don't think so. I think what people are thinking, they get in the hot tub and they're sitting there and they're isolated and they don't have anything to do. And all of a sudden these thoughts come to you. You just mentioned it. Like that happens in the shower. That happens when you're on an airplane. And then you make the jump to, man, I really have good thoughts when I'm doing these things. I don't know if the idea generation bit equals good content, in style. Like once you start, so like if you were on a plane, and this is when I get my best thinking. If you're on a plane and you begin to have these thoughts, the part of the brain that's engaged when I'm having those thoughts, I think is different than the one I'm using when I'm creating content. And immediately when you switch over, you're now doing something. The reason you're having all those good thoughts is because you're not doing anything. The brain goes in an organizational mode. It's like, okay, well, I got some time. Let's start organizing some things. Let's think about some stuff. For a guy who is action every step of the day, when my brain gets to a point where it's got nothing to do, it's kind of the one and only time I ever think strategically. And I think I'm solving all the world's problems. Now I go back and look at that list and I'm like, okay, it's average. I thought it was awesome when I was doing it, but it's kind of just average. But your brain switches over to kind of a different, now you're in talking mode. Well, that talking mode, I don't know if that, maybe for some it does, but I don't think it necessarily makes for great podcasting. So the environments in which you're doing deep thinking, I think separate those from the environments that you're actually doing things in. I think it's actually better for your productivity and for your brain that way. And just separate those two out. So don't think, and maybe you'd make a great hot tub podcast. Maybe you would. I don't know. But I think in a lot of cases, go inside and grab your microphone and, like you said, Dave, and I agree with you, plan in those places. Have something you can jot things down so the ideas don't go away. Have a little voice recorder there. For God's sakes, don't have a video recorder there, but have a voice recorder there. And get some of those things recorded and or written down. Then come back around to it in a time of productivity. And I agree with you there.
John makes a great point. The new thing about Apple Notes is it now transcribes your audio notes. So go walk, talk to yourself, then come back and record without the road noise. Yeah. And then Dave says maybe he could record his thoughts outside for an agenda and do the podcast later. Yeah. Throw them into Otter or something and ChatGPT, like, hey, make this better, make this organized. Yeah, all sorts of things you could do there. The hot tub one, I'm just like, because you don't want to like poo-poo everybody's idea. I was just like, why are we doing it in a hot tub? And he couldn't really explain it, just besides the fact that I guess he's kind of like, well, I'm going to be different. I'm going to record my podcast in a hot tub. So, that's like,
maybe it'll work. It'll work. Thanks for that shout out, John Spencer. Look at that in chat. That's kind of nice. A super chat.
Nice.
And a question. Yeah.
All right. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. Super chat question. Today's chat group participants, what is your special podcast related, I didn't read fast enough, related Christmas holiday memory? Do you have a special
podcast related Christmas holiday memory?
Podcast related is kind of the tough part. I got tons of them. And I got to write this down. Remember, nostalgia. We have to talk about nostalgia later.
Okay.
I'm writing that down.
Chat room, throw some things in there.
Yeah, I always find it like I got a Christmas card from Kim Newlove. in my P.O. box. That was heartwarming. And I was like, oh, cool. And she does that every year. So that's always kind of fun, but Christmas related.
Yeah, I don't know if I have one.
No, I'm going to say me.
Interesting. I always take time off around the holidays. I have done. I've not done a Christmas Day. I've done a Christmas. I think I've done both a Christmas Eve and a day after Christmas, which I think is Boxing Day. I think the 26th is Boxing Day. I've done both on either side of Christmas. Have not done it. I think there's some opportunities during the holiday seasons, and it doesn't have to just be. We always say the holiday seasons. By the way, I'd love to see some other countries do some of the things, Diwali and some of those during those seasons. But you can, I've seen a lot of them theme. There's a guy I watch who does a whiskey podcast, and he does the 12 days of whiskey tasting, I think.
Yeah.
No, it's an advent calendar. So it's 20, I think those are 24 days or 24.
Something like that.
So there's some of those kinds of things where they've made, I like it from a product standpoint where you can do the 20, you can do an advent calendar, or you can do a 12 days of Christmas kind of thing with product. And I've seen some of those things done well.
Well, Glenn does his holiday extravaganza, and Ray just did one. Ray from Around the Layout podcast. If you know anyone who's into model trains, Around the Layout podcast.com. Is it around? Ooh, see, I should know this. It's either aroundthelayout.com or aroundthelayoutpodcast.com. But whatever it is, just Google Around the Layout podcast, and you'll find Ray. He says, giving away $3,000 worth of model railroad stuff to my Patreon supporters last week. That's a great memory. It is. Anytime you give away stuff, it's always good. Just ask John Spencer. He just gave away $10 to ask a question. He feels wonderful right now.
No, it wasn't 10. It was 25. He was a big
no, really?
spender.
Wait, hold on. 25. Yeah. Well, holy cow! Where's? That's it. So, I love Craig's comment. I have great memories of talking about nostalgia. There you go.
Yeah.
Well, because I always say you should make people laugh, cry, think, groan, educate, or entertain. But as I watched a lot of these stupid Hallmark movies because I wanted something that was on, but yet if I fell asleep in the middle of it, I really didn't care. And they were great for that. And it's aroundthelayout.com. Yeah, I was throwing in too many words there. And so nostalgia, I watched a thing on, I think it's on Amazon, and it's Christmas Through the Decades. And so I went back to, I think it starts in the 60s. So I was a little kid in the 60s. And so it was funny because it just looked like old home movies. And then they got into the 70s. And when they got into the Evel Knievel doll with the motorcycle that you could spin up and then crash, I mean, I tortured that doll like nobody's business. And the nostalgia came back. And I was like, that's a powerful thing. And so as much as we want people to laugh, cry, think, groan, educate, or entertain, I need to somehow work in there, like, and how do you want them to feel? Because if you can make them feel something, that's huge. And my friend and I that was the fun part. He was in right before I got sick. In fact, I'm kind of going, is he the guy that got me sick? Because he was on a plane. And, but we were, when we get together, I grew up with this kid. So we're like, oh, do you remember so-and-so? And remember when Doug Cadill threw up in speech class and blah, blah, all these things that you go back. Do you remember back in the day? And there is something about when you remember those things that, and that's probably why all these Hallmark movies, because it's decorating the tree and all these little, traditions and stuff. And so that's the thing that I just was like, I need to work nostalgia or feeling into that little bumper sticker. And holy cow. Coach Dave coming in. Merry Christmas to Dave and Jim and the chat room. You inspire, keep us from pod fading, spark gear upgrades, yes they do, and bring smiles all year. Your dedication, even when you're tired or sick, adds amazing value to your community. Thank you, Coach Dave. So as I watch these things, I'm like, you know what? Nostalgia is a powerful thing, and if you kind of bill yourself as if it's like, remember the 80s, I'm sure there's probably 20 of those shows there's got to be a lot of nostalgia podcasts because some people just, it makes you either, again, laugh, cry, think, groan, educate, or entertain. And so you're probably laughing at the hairstyles of the 80s or the toys or the music or whatever. And I was just like, nostalgia is that's a powerful little drug. Like if you can somehow tie that into your podcast occasionally and pull it out. I remember once somebody left me a comment. They're like, Dave, you talk about Fonzie too much in your show. And I was like, you know what? When I was growing up, yeah, they're just like, their whole point was a lot of people in your audience aren't going to get that. And I was like, you know what? That's true. But also, I noticed when people join the school of podcasting, a lot of times they're in my age group because they got all my old Walton's jokes and things like that. So I guess I could work in more, Megan Thee Stallion references if I could, or, Tay Tay or, Ariana Grande or whatever. But it's one of those things. Craig says from AI Goes to College, any recommendations on a relatively inexpensive interface recorder combo other than the P4? Not ruling out the P4, but just wondering about alternatives. Yeah, that'd be my first. And the problem with, I love Focusrite stuff, like the Vocast 1 or 2, but they don't record. And so what was the inexpensive interface recorder? Because when you get out of the P4, then you get into the Rodecaster Duo, and that's $400. So it's twice as much. But it has a few more bells and whistles. So it's just a matter of, holy cow, the chat room is going crazy.
It's Christmas time.
It's Christmas
time in the chat room.
So speaking of AIGoesToCollege.com, Craig throwing in a super chat. Thank you very much. And then Ralph coming in. Holy cow, big baller. Ralph coming in with $100. Thank you, my friend. Thanks, guys, for helping me become a better podcaster and answering my weekly questions and rants. You have made an impact on me and my listeners and viewers. We'll feel the ripple effects of the positive impact you've made on my life. God bless you both. Well, thank you, Ralph. That's very kind of you and very generous.
Very nice. Thank you all.
So, yeah, I can't really think of any other, and that's the problem, an interface / recorder. Because interface, Focusrite all day. But I don't think, I know Zoom, but Zoom, if we go like an H6, right? That's got all sorts of bells, but it doesn't do both at the same time. It'll be an interface, it'll be a recorder, but it won't do both. So that would be something, do you need both at the same time? Because I think it's the H6. Most of the new Zoom stuff has 32-bit float, which is a really geeky thing that means it's hard to make bad audio, because if you record it way too soft, you can increase the volume level without increasing hiss. If you actually record it so loud that it's distorted, you can go in and bring it down to where it's not. But none of those are. I keep kind of nudging them going, hey, do you have an update to the P4? And they're like, we can't tell you if we did. And I'm like, well, okay, thanks. Randy Black says the P8 has been slashed from 249 to 549. I got a Tascam Mixcast 4 right here that you can have for a song and a dance. I mean, it's literally been used twice, sitting in a box that I found in a closet. And I'm like, oh, I should do that. Ray says my Rodecaster podcaster, the Rodecaster 1, we'll call it, is scaring the heck out of me. Several times it took multiple reboots to see my mic. Ooh, that would be kind of scary. So, and then Craig has a Vocaster 1. He goes, it's awesome, by the way. Yeah, they're really, if you want easy interface, those are the ones, the Vocaster 1 and 2. Because you literally hit a button, talk into it, it sets the level, and you're good to go. And then you just record directly into Audacity or whatever you're using for that. So that's, I can't think of any off the top of my head. So
it's a good price on that P8. $249 right now, 55% off on Amazon here in the United States. So if you were, that's a heck of a price.
Yeah.
I don't know if I need all 6 channels.
Right.
It's P8, but 6 XLR channels coming in. It would just don't podcast that way. It would, for years I used the Mackie FX Pro, 8, and it had 8 channels. It was an 8-channel mixer. Spilled wine in it twice. It sat on it looked good sitting on the desk. That's about all it did, right? I mean, I went to the Mo2 M2
Yeah.
for the audio interface. I don't do sound effects and stuff. So for me, I just need an audio interface. But boy, that P8 looks pretty good. That may be maybe a nice pickup at $249.
Yeah, not bad. If we go back to, this is an interesting, that's not the right screen. This is. Now do you see looking for opinions, hopefully? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so a guy was looking for opinions, and which is good, right? I had an idea for a podcast. It's very much just an idea, but now I'm interested in hearing people's thoughts on the concept. There's so much content out there that have characters telling people what the secret is. People that deliver their opinion or perspective as hard fact, fake gurus. It runs me wrong, as I feel like the world/people are so complicated that trying to make a hard conclusion seems dishonest. I want to explore and discuss ideas and opinions without trying to reach a conclusion. So that's where I get a little blurry, but I'm like, okay, I want to create a space where people, myself included, share their most real and vulnerable experiences, anonymous or otherwise, the sort of things we share with no one or almost so. The point wouldn't be to solve anything or figure out what the answer is, but just have an open conversation about life's messy, complicated, dark parts and use the conversations to open a dialogue about the human experience as a whole. I won't drone on anymore, but I'm happy to and eager to answer questions. Thanks for reading the post, and I hope we can talk. So, Jim, what would you say to this guy? It's kind of an interesting...
Yeah. Well, it's needed, right? For certainly, it is needed to find a safe space for people to come and be able to express themselves.
Right.
I think you learn from all the support groups that do this kind of thing that you have to have rules, right? If you go to an AA meeting, they have some pretty strict rules about what you can and can't say. I don't think most humans can be trusted just in like, hey, let's just have an open conversation about things, especially if it's online or anonymous. Like I just don't think you can do those things anonymously. Now, some of you are going to be like, yes, you can, and I have. Okay, great, awesome. I just don't think most humans can. It's a really, really difficult thing, especially when it's anonymous. For some reason, people feel like they need to be jerks in that kind of situation. I don't know why that feels good to them to do those kinds of things, but they do. They're often mean in those kinds of situations. So, listen, it's peace on earth, no hunger, no more wars. Isn't there a Christmas song that I'm following there?
I think so. If not,
this is my favorite Christmas wish. I think that's what it is. But the reality of it is, if you're going to have those kinds of things, it's going to have to be moderated heavily, and you're going to have serious rules. Because, listen, large groups always default to the least common denominator, and you're going to have somebody who comes in there. They don't know how to be kind. They're damaged enough that they just don't know how to do it. And then that's going to spark others, and it's going to default. So if you can do this, you're amazing, because this is a really hard thing to do. I'm not saying it's impossible, but if you can do it, man, keep doing it, because people need it. But just know, the more vulnerable you're going to let people be, the more rules you're going to need to have in place. And the more you're going to have to moderate people out of the group. You're going to have to show some people the door to say, yeah, maybe go do your own thing. This group isn't for you. And that's hard. That's really hard for some people to do.
Yeah. Holy cow. We'll take a break for 2 seconds, except there it is.
Holidays.
Thank you, Craig, from La Mansión del Inglés. Oh, boy, that's, I should know how to pronounce that. He's an awesome supporter. Thank you for the super chat. The other thing that's going to make this hard is when you do a crowd participation show and you have no crowd. That's going to be, and then you go, hey, everybody, thanks so much for showing up. I'd like you to pull your pants down in public and
Right.
be
Right.
vulnerable.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm like, you almost need, like, that's almost like a Facebook group. But now when you're doing it in Facebook, you're not really anonymous anymore. And
Yeah.
so I totally agree. I think we need more dialogue in the world versus, how can you even think that? I bet you don't even support the troops, that kind of talk.
Yeah.
You got America on one side and then the
Yeah.
way left, and without going down that road. But it's one of those things where I just saw it. I was like, man, I totally give you thumbs up on the idea. The other thing was kind of weird is he said, we don't want to come to any conclusions. And I was like, okay, so who's the audience again? Because usually a show is we help whatever, podcasters, right? In my case, we help podcasters who are trying to, launch, plan, grow, whatever their show, so they can, like, what's the benefit? And I was like, this kind of doesn't fit that kind of model unless we are
Mhm.
looking for people trying to get to the truth who need to hear both sides of the story so they can come to their own conclusions. Maybe that would be it. But I was just like, what's the benefit here? And I was like, the way he described it. And again, he's just spitballing. So I'm not, no shame on how he described it. But I was like,
Uh,
you know,
it gets riskier the bigger the groups are.
yeah,
And so these are really, I mean, these vulnerable open conversations, they're best heavily moderated, right? Could you make a podcast about people sharing these stories? Absolutely, because it's a one-on-one conversation and you're choosing what to
yeah,
publish, right? To have a group where that's just open, not saying it can't happen, it just opens it up to a lot of things that make that more difficult, and misunderstandings. This is really what hurts us the most in our human experience is someone says something and we misunderstand it, and it almost always then goes down this rabbit hole of distrust and anger and whatever, when it didn't. It's hard for us as humans to do that kind of thing. Now, making a podcast where you're curating that content and showing the world that, oh, absolutely, because you have ultimate control
yeah,
over that piece, and you can decide what goes out and what doesn't. I prefer that method. I would say let's be careful and curate how we get that content out there, because listen, you're talking about people's lives here,
yeah.
and this is important stuff, and I think it's a big responsibility. So it is, not impossible, but very, very challenging.
Yeah, Coach Dave says again, kind of like what you just said. Humans used to be better at handling discussions and other factions, but that was when faith gave us boundaries and filled the
Uh,
gaps.
I kind of
You know,
disagree with that. I don't know if we've ever been. I don't think you can ever go back to a time in history and say, "Oh man, humans were so good."
mm.
We, we've never been good. Like we always have had struggles,
I
and
remember in
so it's just it's part of our nature in who we are. It's just a struggle kind of thing. I know sometimes we want to go back and, we're talking about nostalgia. We
yeah,
want to go back and have nostalgic thoughts about, oh, back when it was that. Well, no, I mean, it might have been, but it was just as awful. There were other awful things happening during those times. And it's just part of the human condition. I think the key, Dave, is to know and understand the human condition, and then do things around it to help people, to help people do what we need to do to be good people. Let's not think about the way things were in the past, but how about today? Are we going
yeah,
to be good humans today? How can you be a good human today? And not look at other people, or let's not fault other cultures, or let's not fault other sides of the political spectrum. How about you? What are you doing to be a good human today? And I think that's where it starts.
I like that for an idea of a podcast. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sure if you Google it right now, there's probably 50 good deed of the day podcasts or something, like good
Yeah,
news. There was a famous dude that was
they've
on
been
The
trying.
Office.
That's right.
There was a famous guy that was an actor on The Office that actually got a pretty big show during COVID, just reporting good news, because every day it was like, well, 5 million people died today, and anyone that swallows saliva over a long period of time will be dead by Thursday. And it was like, wait, what? So he came out with this good news show where it was
Uh,
just uplifting stories of, Farmer John helped get the cat out of the tree kind of stories,
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Craig says, if you want to have a better world, be a better person. There you go. Yeah. From the guy
listen, you can be a better person, and that doesn't mean other people are going to be better. Like, I think that's what we think. Like, oh, I'm going to be good, and other people are going to follow. No, you live in a broken world. It's just not going to happen. But that doesn't mean you're off the hook. You need to be the best version of yours. If you want to live in that kind of world, you have to create that around you to be the best person that you can be. So it's, man, all of a sudden I sound like a Tony Robbins blog.
I had the weirdest experience though at Discount Drug Mart because they save you the runaround, and so I went there, and we're all in line, and we're all kind of cranky because it's a big line, and why don't they open up more registers? Because they were all open, and the guy in front of me, well, first there's a lady, shopper number 1, and she ends up putting some sort of lipstick back because she can't afford it. So shopper number 2, the guy directly in front of me, says, hey, I want to throw that lipstick on mine. I'm going to run and catch her. So they go to charge it, and his card won't go through. And I'm like, what a nice gesture. And I said, hey, hold on. If you're having a problem with your card, let's just put it on mine. To which shopper number 2 got offended that I was insinuating that his card wasn't any good and got mad. And I was like, wait, I'm like, hey, you got a great idea. I got a great card. Let's, and it turned very weird quickly. Sure. And so he went out and got a different card. And by that time, the woman was already gone or something. It was just a really weird. I'm like, hey, we're all trying to do nice things. And he's like, no, man, I don't need your card. And I'm like, well, according to the cashier, you do. It was so weird. So,
well, sometimes the system is against us, right? In those situations, no good deed goes unpunished, right? And so you even think, oh, I'm going to do a nice thing here, and then it ends up backfiring,
blowing up in your face.
Everybody's mad. Yeah,
I'm sorry,
you still got to do it.
Sorry, I tried to do something nice. Yeah. Here's another. This one is one of those where. This is why I like to hang out with brand new podcasters, because it keeps me fresh on these kind of ideas. And I keep doing that. Oh, it's because I have that weird double desktop going on. It was how to promote a new podcast. I was wondering if someone could help me with resources or ideas about how to possibly promote a new podcast I just began. It's a mental health / talk show podcast. I want to know how to spread the world. I want to spread the world of it. Okay, that's what he says. I've tried in X and posting multiple episodes and friends and everything, but I haven't been able to make a difference. Are there content creators or streamers that support new content creators to get help from? And so I think because he's a brand new podcaster, nobody has let him know that you can promote on X and Threads and Blue Sky and Facebook and Instagram. And what am I missing? I'm sure there's another, gazinka doink.
All of them.
Yes. And none of them will give you thousands of downloads. They'll give you, I've been doing the thing where any link I put on Twitter or social, I now tag so I can see how much traffic is coming from that. And the answer is not much. Now am I going to stop doing that? No, because it is a trickle. It's a trickle. But I always think it's weird, like, how do I promote my show? And I kind of get that they're asking what's the best marketing thing, but I also sometimes hear kind of through the lines, like, I don't know how to tell people about my show, or where do I, and I'm like, so I just told him, I said, hey, it's a matter of figuring out who your audience is, go to where they are, make friends with them, because if you skip that step, the next step, which is tell them about your show, is spam. So you have to build a relationship with people and then say, oh, by the way, I talk about this on episode 14 to get them to go listen to it. But in the end, you grow your podcast one download at a time. And I always just seems it's like, I don't know how to tell people about my podcast. And I'm like, okay, this is a new person, but there are things like, don't just say episode 12 is out, because that doesn't make me click. I always say, think of your social like the people that are following you who already know you have a podcast in theory, write something that they can then retweet, to use the X kind of terminology here. So that when you say, hey, this week we talked about a way to whatever, blah, 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 if you know somebody who's into that, be sure to let them know. And so your tweets, your social posts should be marketing material for the people that are following you. I get that, but I've heard so many people say that because I know I do this, when I go to Twitter or I go to Threads or Blueface or Chatbook or whatever, there's 8 million of these things now. I'm just going there to see if there's anything that jumps out at me enough to go, oh, wait, I'm going to stop looking. I found something and I'm going to click on that. And I'm probably not going back to social. Like if you've won the social lottery, you had something that I go, oh, that sounds interesting. Click. And the other thing that's really weird now on X, especially, you're not supposed to put links in your tweets. You're supposed to tweet it and then put a link in the reply. And I need to verify this because people are like, no, Elon said this. And I'm like, really? Because that makes it such a pain in the butt, especially if you're scheduling tweets. And I still call it Twitter and I still call it that. And,
it's called X.
I know. But I don't know. I guess I just scratch my head that people go, I don't know how to tell people about my show. And I'm like, maybe I'm just in it too long to where I'm like, you just go tell people about your show.
No. Consistency is key, being interesting, getting a few breaks. Help. You got to get the word out somehow. You got to get people to help promote it for you. You just got to work it. It's not going to work for everybody. And Randy, by the way, we talked over, but Randy Black, thank you.
Oh my goodness. There we go. Thank you, kind sir.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Yeah.
Appreciate you guys supporting Dave. And it's full transparency. This all goes to Dave, just so you guys know.
Unless Dave sends you an Amazon gift card when this is over.
Yeah, you don't have to. You don't have to. Your gift is me getting to hang out. I've said this many times. Your gift to me is I get 90 minutes with you every single week. I love it. Like, listen, we've been doing this for 1,000 years, so I wouldn't keep doing it if I didn't like it. But that's your gift to me. So, but I do appreciate every single one of you who support Dave doing it this way, because it's important what he does. He does all the work. When we're done, he stops and I'm like, peace. And that's it, right? That's all I do. And in fact, maybe I should feel guilty about this. I don't promote it maybe as much as I should on socials. I do on Mondays when I get in, I see it in my LinkedIn feed and I like it and make a comment so it'll show up for other people or whatever. But it's a different, I appreciate you just allowing me to do this, and thanks to everybody who gives along those lines. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Danny has a great point. Newsletters and paid promos on actual podcast apps are far more effective than social media. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that.
If you're a YouTuber and you don't have a newsletter, you're making a mistake. Because YouTube does some crazy things with your feed sometimes, and you can disappear at any moment. And so make sure you've got ways, that should be a mandatory thing for YouTubers. And it's probably should be a mandatory thing for podcasters too, to say, I think about all the emails. Part of my job at Gallup is to manage this community, and just the sheer, you think you're sending people emails and they're getting it and they're not, or you think they're seeing it on social and they're not. And just the sheer amount of shenanigans that go on with all those things, for a lot of people, a newsletter it's another way to have a point of contact with them. So if you think, oh, well, they're in my Facebook group, well, they may not be checking about that. Should be checking that. Or, oh, I've got them connected to them on LinkedIn. A newsletter is probably a smart thing for everybody to have. If you don't have one, do you need to make one? Probably. Yeah, probably. By the way, self-disclosure, I started and stopped about 8 newsletters. Okay. I get going and I hate doing this. Now, in the advent of AI, I bet I could have AI write a pretty good newsletter for me. I just hated writing them. And I bet now I could write a good monthly summary newsletter, let AI help me be a lot faster. Maybe I'll get back to that. Maybe I'll get back to a newsletter.
It's not a bad idea. Chris from castahead.net, are on social generally. Are you this type of person and have this problem? We talk about it, how you can solve that here. Let us know if that helped you. Yeah, it's back to, who doesn't want to benefit? So Ralph has a free tip of the day. This is a great time to get your entity created for your podcast. And Ralph is doing this for me because Ralph has offered to help me with this, and it's still on my to-do list, way overdue. Like, it's on the top of the list. It says like overdue is now in red and bold. It's like, do this. So yeah. Elon says hashtags are no longer necessary, per Coach Dave. He also said they make posts look ugly. Well, there you go. Yeah, it's what's interesting is I've heard, because everybody ran over to Blue Sky.
Blue Sky. Yep.
And Blue Sky is now going, oh.
Not everybody, half the population.
Yeah, half the population. Yes, that's a very good point.
Yeah.
And which, the other 20% went to Threads when Elon bought, all this stuff. And I heard that Blue Sky is now going, well, this is more taxing on our server than it used to be. We're going to have to pay for this. So we're going to have to probably get into advertising, to which point I go, oh, congratulations. You've now completely recreated Twitter, because now people are going to go back to, how can you advertise next to blah, blah? That guy said booger, and I'm not buying your product because he said poopy butt. So, yeah, I was like, so that'll be fun to watch that, just it's history repeating itself. So we shall see. You don't think so?
It is. I was agreeing.
Okay.
Yes, it is repeating itself, indeed.
Mr. Nessie, Mr. Chris Nessie, have you guys collectively thought about promoting this more to expand the live audience? How far would you guys actually go with free consulting for someone who shows up and calls in? I've always, I get giddy when we had one, I think this year, that she just had an idea, and we kind of walked her through the whole thing and that whole 9 yards. What I always find very interesting is the person who wants to pick my brain, and I politely tell them, oh, that's called consulting. You can order it here. And they go, oh, yeah, and I'll be like, well, I offer free consulting on Saturday. You just have to get up at 10:30 in the morning. And I'm here to tell you, I've never had a person take me up on it. And I'm like, okay, I see how you it's free. You just got to get up, and it's not like 7 in the morning unless you're Jim. If you're on the East Coast, it's a no-brainer. So I always found that kind of interesting. That I'm like, oh,
it's not early for me. It's 9:30. That's
okay.
Yeah,
I thought
that's no.
Yeah,
I'm just an hour behind you. Jim's controversial thought for the day. If I haven't already been controversial, I think so. To Chris's point, to Chris's question, have we ever thought about promoting to expand our live audience? I think smaller's better. I think we have a really well curated chat room that understands the rules, is very, very helpful, is kind to each other. They're well moderated. We have across the spectrum of thought. It's pretty diverse. It could be, we could work on our diversity, just to be honest, but it's pretty diverse. It's better. It's better than some. I mean, it's two white guys doing the podcast. It could be all guys in the chat. Right. And we do get some of the ladies that show up from time to time. I think in this case, smaller's better, and it's easier to curate. I think we make better content because of that. I think we're more focused because of that. Say we did blow it out. All of a sudden, one day we had 500 people in the chat room. It'd be unmanageable. And for those who are regular listeners, I'm not sure you'd like it, because there would be a whole bunch of chat coming in from people you don't know, and they'd be messing up the format, and you're making Dave all jittery because there's too many comments.
Trying to keep up.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. And so I people always wish for, oh man, if I could just grow this bigger. How about managing who you have and doing a really good job? And then again, I think that it makes better content that we're smaller. So that's my controversial comment for that.
No, I agree. I love when a new conference will take off and you're like, that was amazing. And the first thing they do is like, how can we make this bigger? And I'm like, how can we do this more often? When you make it bigger, it's all like, well, we want to make it big without losing the small feel. And I'm like, how about you just keep it small? You don't have to worry about losing the small feel if it's small, and just do it more often, but it's a lot of work. So I already know my own answer to
And
that.
as we get bigger, or if we got bigger, I mean, obviously we have found our center because it's 35 to 55 people.
Yeah.
That's probably also the age range, by the way. 35 to 55 is probably our demographic,
There you go.
yeah, we found that nice balance in there that allows us to have these kinds of conversations that I think are actually helpful to people who don't, not listen. It would be great. We do another a couple hundred. I don't know what's the download number on a weekly basis for an episode. Do you think of one of these? A couple hundred, maybe.
I have. Oh yeah, probably.
Let's just say maybe
If I had to guess, 200 to 400.
Yeah,
It used to be around 800 before the Apple thing.
and then the real numbers started kicking, and that's okay. By now, if they wanted to be here, they would have come, but they don't. They want to listen, and so that's fine too. And so you're listening. Those people are listening right now. Thank you for listening to the recorded version of it. Right, and you don't have to be here to be important. Thank you for coming and doing this.
And dynamically, at the end of the show, I say, hey, if you want to leave us a question, if you can't attend live, go to askthepodcastcoach.com/voicemail. We've gotten 0. Because it's on Buzzsprout at the top of the show notes. It's like, click here to text us a message or a question. And we've got 0. So we get our questions from, interesting people in Reddit and our awesome, last week when I had COVID, I'm like, man, I hope the chat room comes through because I'm not feeling it today. I know people are saying about my noise gate. There's 2 things. Number 1, I'm breathing much louder. And number 2, my furnace just kicked on. And so, I'm not hearing it, but I understand it's probably.
It's okay. It's okay. It's a little aggressive, but I think it's okay. I think the thing that ruins podcasts are numbers. You watch some podcasters I see this on YouTube all the time, where YouTubers start small and they start getting popular, and then they start listening to their audience in ways that are not healthy. And then the audience becomes, the fact that they're getting, let's say 100,000 subscribers. They start getting distracted by those subscribers, and then the content kind of is not. They're kind of afraid of, or they're arguing with their comment section in the next video, and you're like, well, I don't want to hear you argue with your audience. I came here for your content. And so I think sometimes the things that ruins really good shows is actually popularity. And so I kind of prefer folks who are doing their thing. They're doing their art. They're doing it well, and they're not getting distracted by fame. If that's the case. Did you get it figured out? I tried to talk.
I don't know. I was because I can't hear because I got my stupid furnace on in the background. Alexa, set the temperature to 65. Yeah. Well, that's the whole point. Yeah. I still don't find proactive / voice messaging options on websites to be super effective. Yeah. We don't get a ton of people use, and it's weird because the first thing I hear is, hey, on Podpage, the limit is set to 2 minutes. And we're like, yeah, that's, tell your people to, figure out what they're going to say before they hit record. But then the other thing is I'll go in and I'll see where, not a lot of downloads coming that way. Yeah. So Chris says, I just get annoyed that some podcasts get emails, feedback, and I can't get a larger percentage of my audience to take action and share thoughts. That is annoying. I've always talked about Weekly Web Tools was a show I had that I got 0 response until I threatened to quit. And then they gave me a bunch, and that lasted for about a week and a half, and then I got nothing. So Uncle Marv says, don't listen to subscribers unless they're engaged in other ways. That means we get, but yeah, I'd rather have the right people versus a ton of people that are, it's not a bad show. So it's kind of tricky because our ego always wants to be fed. I was laughing this week because there was a report that came out from somebody I've never heard of, and he was like the top 5 podcasts about podcasting. And I scrolled to the bottom of the list, and the School of Podcasting is nowhere to be found. And there was a part of me that was like, how dare you? Right? Because that's kind of my goal. I want to be the guy. And so I was kind of like, all right, I didn't get mad. I was like, this is a little fuel in the tank. All right, I want to get on this guy's radar. And I went back to the same page and scrolled to the very bottom of the article, and it says honorable mention, School of Podcasting, blah, blah, blah. So
Nice.
it's kind of funny how the ego, there's definitely an ego involved in podcasting.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And listen, your ego should be engaged. It makes you, I think it helps you create good content when your ego is engaged. So it should, you need to have a little bit, and maybe ego and pride equals pride, right? Or equals being proud of what you're making or happy with what you're making. So don't rule that out for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Full stop.
We need an ego just to start. You have to feel like,
I think it's okay.
Yeah.
I think it's okay to have some. I always operate a little bit better when I'm told I shouldn't or I can't do something. That is like, put me in an environment with a lot of risk, and people don't want me to do it, and it's high. The success rates get very low. I'm all in. As soon as you make it easy, or as soon as everybody starts doing it, this has been kind of amazing with me in podcasting that I haven't ditched it already, because now everybody's doing a podcast. Is if you want me to get out of something, just make it easy for me. And then I'm like, that's boring.
Yeah.
I don't want to do this anymore. So.
Mark from Late Night Internet Marketing. Well, here's the fun thing about having a jingle. The minute Mark showed up in the chat room, I heard Late Night Internet Marketing.
Oh, nice.
It's like the audio branding is strong. You know what else is strong? The awesome supporters that do support this show. We had a ton of super chats today. Thank you to everyone who's been doing that. I appreciate that. But you can be an awesome supporter every week by going over to, I thought I had it on here. I guess that's at the last slide. But anyway, the show is also brought to you by the School of Podcasting, where we have courses, unlimited coaching, and a really awesome community. I know we have Steph, we have Craig, we have Ralph, and if I'm missing anybody, I'm sorry. You can go over there, use the coupon code COACH, and that comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee. We are using Podpage, where I'm the head of podcasting over there. You can check it out at trypodpage.com. And if you're working on a new show for 2025, I have never played with this till yesterday. If you go to the very bottom, so you have to scroll by the many, many, many testimonials, but at the very bottom, there's a thing that says Podcast Name Generator. And it's actually kind of slick. I played with it yesterday. It was like, interesting. And right now we're streaming live on Ecamm, and you can find that at askthepodcastcoach.com/Ecamm. And today, just because why not, we're on Rumble, we're on Twitter. It still won't let me go live to Facebook. I forget where else. I think I'm on LinkedIn, but I threw in Rumble just for giggles. And if you need more Jim Collison, and who doesn't, look at that guy. Look, he's got his Nebraska shirt. He's all red. He's killing two birds with one stone. He's promoting Nebraska, and he's looking very festive. Just go over to theaverageguy.tv, and it's time for the supporter of the week. Will it be the ladies at Flame Alive, or Craig over at AI Goes to College, Randy at Bible Bites, Shane? Oh, by the way, Jody Kringle, I drank Airborne from your coffee mug this week. So thank you for that. Appreciate that over at the Audio Branding Show. Let's spin that wheel and see what comes up. I don't know why it's muted. I'm not hearing the lovely clickety click. But is it? Yes, it is. Speaking of holiday madness, the one and only Glenn Hebert from the Horse Radio Network. Also, by the way, the oldest supporter from Ask the Podcast. Not oldest in age, but I think he was the first. So thank you, Glenn, for all the years of supporting Ask the Podcast Coach. If you're into horsies, go over to horseradionetwork.com. I deeply appreciate that. And
I think I have a mug. I have a horse.
Oh, there you go. Wait, hold on. Let's, there it is. HRN, baby. And Glenn is probably going to be coming back on the show here in a couple episodes. I got a couple interviews lined up for January, so that'll be fun. And if this show saves you time, saves you money, saves you headaches, and we keep you educated and maybe just a little entertained, you can become an awesome supporter by going over to askthepodcastcoach.com/awesome. Chat room. we'll throw this out. It's the last episode of no, it won't. We'll have one on the 28th. So it's not the final one. But I was going to throw out what should we, because they're already coming out of the woodwork. But the whole predictions for next year.
Yeah.
Yeah. The one thing I thought was interesting as I was thinking about this today, again, in the shower, where my brain was, free to think about whatever I wanted to think about, was, audiograms really, I can't remember the last time I saw a squiggly line.
Yeah.
They've all been replaced by shorts on video. But I remember when those were the bee's knees as we continue to pull great phrases from the 30s from the show. It's the bee's knees. It's so I'm just wondering, like, what in 2020, like, are shorts going to be still super popular? Or is that going to be the new thing that we all kind of go, because everybody's using CapCut, so they all look the same at this point. Also, is my noise gate any better?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit better. Maybe instead of predictions, which we always forget about, we never write them down. We ought to invite next week. We could do like a rapid fire with folks who come out live. We'd want you to join us, and you can jump in for a few minutes and tell us what are you going to do differently with your podcast in 2025, and get real specific with it. Prediction shows are great, but I'd rather hear from our audience and have you jump in live. We'll read your stuff in chat, but why don't you plan on it next week? Get your stuff set up, be ready to go. Those of you who are listening live, and we should write this down so we don't forget about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Then jump in, and we'll give you a few minutes to talk a little bit about what you think you might do different next year.
Yeah, because that with a little planning, we could set up a poll, in or out, let our audience help decide. You got my brain thinking here.
Yeah, Chris, I'm not thinking about having everybody on screen at the same time.
Oh,
no. I was thinking you'd join us. We'd bring you in. You could sit in queue. We'd bring you on one at a time and give you a few minutes. So some of you might be sitting in the queue for a few minutes, but let you come on and give you 2 or 3 minutes to talk about what you're going to do different or what you're hoping for in 2025 around your podcast.
Yeah. Danny's got my next episode. People realize video first isn't the magical tool for huge audience growth and monetization, and focus on continuing to deliver outstanding, I got to read faster apparently, outstanding experience on audio for the listeners. What I'm doing, my next episode is, and it was really interesting. I was listening to Todd and Rob today, and it's a great example of it depends on what you're using for your source of information. Because Rob is reading all these, I believe, so this is my guess. Rob is reading a lot of the bigger, I don't know if it's Variety or, bigger media things, and they're all talking about video podcasts. And Todd is very much getting his feedback from his customers. And so what was interesting is listening to them, because they're not openly arguing. It's just they both disagree on about everything at this point. And it was something where I forget what Todd said. And it was literally like the minute it came out of his mouth, Rob was like, well, people are saying that, and Todd's like, well, where are you getting that from? What's the thing? It's just, and it was so fun. Because it's just, they're both right based on the information they're using for sources. And so it's going to be, and it was just, they were talking about video, of course, and I'm dying to hear what Spotify has to say. I've been contacted by Spotify, and I still haven't I'm under a NDA till January. And I could just say, the information you're dying to hear, I don't have. So I was really hoping to get some details and didn't. So, and Danny says, speaking of the media, most of the journalists that are writing for the big publications are talking about podcasting since 2020, not before. Elsie Escobar has some great thoughts on this. I'll have to look into that. Elsie's a person I love to read her stuff, just because here's again, completely different viewpoint. Not wrong, but she hangs out in places that I don't. And so I always love, one of the things I loved and still love about Elsie Escobar is she just thinks completely different than I do. And it doesn't mean she's wrong. She just has different sources of knowledge that come in. I'm like, I never thought about that. I'll give you an example. It was up for about 10 minutes. And I was, I look at podcasters always looking for the shortcut. Like, what can I do this? What's the least amount of work I can do to make the most money, et cetera, which I understand the concept. But I put up I had ChatGPT or some AI tool make a green pill that was round, and I put the Spotify logo on it, which I was kind of surprised they let me use the Spotify logo. And I said, because this is when Spotify had announced, video is here, everyone come over here, and money from heaven is coming, honest. And I was like, oh, here we go with another big Spotify announcement. And I was kind of saying, look, Spotify's not the shortcut. It's just not. And I made the kind of equation of shortcut, Spotify, Ozempic, right? Because everybody's dancing around like, I've got type 2 diabetes and I'm so happy because I'm losing. And I'm like, wait, if you got diabetes, you're not really happy about it. And I kind of saw Ozempic as many people are taking that as a shortcut to losing weight. And I had somebody contact me and said, hey, like, I agree with you on Spotify, but I have people in my family that were going to die. And they started taking Ozempic and they lost weight. And you're kind of like shaming people that use Ozempic. And I was like, you know what? Hadn't thought about that. And it doesn't take long. I went over and went edit and delete post. So there are times when, like, was I wrong? No, but I could have said, hey, for all of you that are taking this for health reasons, you're going to die, keep on taking it, but I wasn't like, you know what, it's a post and delete it. So there are different points of view sometimes. And I'm like, yeah, you know what, I'll take that down. I get your point. Didn't mean to. And he wasn't even offended. He's just like, hey, just so you know, there is some good coming from that drug. And I was like, all right, well, we'll see. All right. So
good on you. I often keep digging myself into a hole. And then you get defensive and then you're like, well, and then you say some more things and you're like, oh, now I've dug the hole pretty deep. I'll never get out of this thing. So good. I think it's good. Good on you for just being like, yeah, do I need this? I mean, is it that important that for this post? Nah, it's not that important. Right or wrong, not that important. There were some folks. So good on you for thinking through that. I like it.
Well, and I always love when people go, somebody's contacted me about an interview we did 4 years ago and they want me to take it down. What should I do? And my answer is take it down. Yeah. Like, it's 4 years. You're getting a trickle of downloads on that, unless your stuff is super. But I'd rather save the relationship than go, you signed up, blah, blah, blah. I got it right here. Too bad for you. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
Is it that important? So I've never been.
It's never super clear, right? Always what we should do. It's never super clear. It's for in those kinds of situations, you kind of think, do I have to? I mean, and it's a struggle. I mean, it's a struggle. I really have to work on. I get defensive so fast. And that's, for me, that's something I need to take. I need a 7-second or a 7-minute or a 7-hour rule. It's like, Jim, put the email in the back. I used to check email first thing in the morning. Man, I sent some emails that I just really regret during and then I started thinking, okay, I'm not gonna answer those emails till I've taken a shower and I've had some breakfast. And then lately I've been like, okay, I'm not going to answer those emails till I get to work and I get through some of my chores. Then I'll come back to them, just give me some time to get through it and process it. Because my first reaction is not my best reaction. That's one of the things I mean, my best minute might be last minute. That can be true. But my first reaction is almost always a bad reaction. And I need to protect myself from that for sure.
Classic example. I talked about it when we were talking about podcastbranding.co, that this, client of mine, an editing client, sent me their artwork. And I literally went to Loom and brought up his image. And I'm like, dude, like, this is awful. And it was one of those, like, today I kind of go, man, it's a little harsh. Just a little harsh. I could have said, hey, there are other ways you might, here's some other things you might want to consider. Notice that you can't read any of your artwork. It's unreadable. And I'm thinking you want people to be able to read this. But I started off with, dude, this is awful. It was like, probably could have worded that a little less,
Yeah.
So that's always fun.
Couple comments in the chat room. It's always a good idea to reflect, but if we have a public voice, we're going to offend someone at some point.
Yeah, that's true.
And Danny says, if you're not offending someone, you're doing it wrong.
Doing it wrong.
I think intent matters in these cases. Like, what's your intent? What are you saying? Is what you're saying trying to move things forward or help people? So I don't know. It's the hardest thing about what we do.
I remember,
and you're right. You're not going to please everybody all the time.
Yeah, I remember once I was at an event, and it was a discussion on diversity and such, and I said, I am nervous just raising my hand as a middle-aged white guy, and I said, I'm still unclear as to what terminology are you. Is it black people? Is it African American? Is it and I feel like just raising it, I'm going to look stupid and you stupid racist pig and blah, blah, blah. And the woman kind of answered the question, but didn't really answer the question. And this older person of color, there's another one. Is that the proper way? But this black woman came over to me and she said, baby, you don't have to worry about a thing because I can hear your heart. And I was like, all right, I'm going to go with that. So, and just realize that I'm going to offend somebody somewhere, and so, Danny says, I blame participation trophies for this all the time. Yeah, it's, it is what it is. So, but, Jim, big plans for Christmas? Got the little ones coming over?
Yeah, all the kids will come over and big dinner, and it's the favorite day of the year here. My kids really love Christmas, and so it'll be a house full by 6:30 or 7. I'll be retreating, and as much as I love activity and noise, and by 6:37 I'll be retreated down here to watch YouTube videos in quiet.
Yeah, I remember my niece, who now has my great nieces and nephews when they were little, it was like inside voice. That was the only thing. Alana, inside voice, because everything was always, you're like, oh, and you, after about 3 hours, you're like, I'm done with that. So, but to everyone watching and listening, hope you have a great holiday next week. We will be back on the 28th. So that's fun-filled and exciting. Hopefully, completely. Like, I'm hoping the stuffy nose thing goes away because I'm kind of tired of like.
I couldn't tell.
See, that's it. See, that's classic podcaster overthinking right there. Right. Because my throat's not feeling like it normally does. So
I'm just glad you're not dead. I'm glad you're not dead.
That's it. You know what, Jim? Right back at you, man. I'm glad you're not dead. It's a beautiful thing.
Hey, at our age, you never know.
You never know. That's it.
Either way, it could go either way.
Ted Nugent's 76, man, and Paul McCartney's in his 80s, and I think Mick Jagger's 4,000 years old at this point, something like that.
At least. I think he was around with the Pharaohs. I'm pretty sure.
That's it. Pharaoh, what do you want here? Jumping Jack Flash, right? Exactly. Are you doing a show this week? Are you taking it off, or what's going on?
I recorded one Thursday. John Biggs joins me, a longtime listener. We talked kind of about personal fitness, but from a fitness tracker. He has a glucose monitor that you put on your arm, and it
right here, baby.
You got one of those? Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe I have to talk to you off about that. I may do one of those, just to kind of get an idea of what food is doing to me in real time. We've got great advice around what it does in general, but these kinds of glucose monitors help us in real time. This is what it does to me, so I may give that a try. It's available now, homegadgetgeeks.com.
Yeah, on the School of Podcasting, I am doing some research on how is video working versus audio from a statistical standpoint. And also, if you haven't answered it already, go to schoolofpodcasting.com/question. The last question of the month every year is, what is your one favorite podcast and why? Then, of course, tell us where we can find that. And tell us where we can find your show and a little bit about that. You can find that at schoolofpodcasting.com/question, because that will be the last episode for the School of Podcasting. And what's interesting, I'm still doing this. And stats have shown that nobody really gets into this episode as much as they used to. So I'm always like, oh, I like it because I really love the why. But thanks to the chat room. Thanks for all the super chats. We'll see you next week with Ask the Podcast Coach.